You're listening to the Night Demon Network. Go to nightdemon.net/subscriber to unlock more exclusive content.
Welcome to the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast. I'm your host, Nesbit, and today we're going to continue our deep dive into Night Demon's third single of 2020, the Thin Lizzy-inspired tribute to Phil Lynott. This is Are You Out There Part 2. So just a note that the Year of the Demon compilation is officially available. All these tracks that we're covering since the new year, they're finally available in one compilation. So if you missed this limited edition 7-inch singles that all sold out, now you can get all of these tracks on CD or vinyl, or there's even a cassette version. So check out nightdemon.net for details, or episode 76 of this podcast. We went over this compilation track by track. But today, we're focusing on Are You Out There? So this is a song that is maybe more hard rock than metal, but still 100% Night Demon. Here's Jarvis Leatherby.
Regarding the song being more hard rock than metal, it's like when I tell people that we're a heavy metal band, we'll be walking through an airport with our guitars and, somebody will say, "Oh, are you guys in a band?" And we're like, "Yeah, what's the name of the band?" Night Demon. Whoa, what kind of music do you play? We play heavy metal. Oh, everybody assumes that automatically we're screaming at them already, and we're about blood and gore, and it's like, the down-tuned heaviest thing, and it's like, stay away from us. But really, when you think about the kind of heavy metal that we play, it's basically classic rock. It's been around for so long, and we're a very melodic band. So you can go back to songs like Living Dangerous or Mastermind, or a lot of stuff. Even in the song Night Demon, our first song. I mean, there's always been a kind of 70s rock vibe to what we do. And there's always, or Save Me Now, that's more like an AOR kind of song. We've always straddled that line between, I guess you would say, metal and hard rock.
I think it showcases what we can do as a band as far as like not playing 1,000 miles an hour. It'd be interesting, like, if somebody were to come up to me and be like, "What does your band sound like?" You're called Night Demon. I would expect your metal, right? And then you play them a song like that, and they're like, "Whoa, that is not even what I was expecting." And I think it would be in a good way, So that's what I think is cool about this song. It shows a different side of us. It shows that we can do something a little different and out of the box. And it was recorded on tape. It's got a really cool vibe, So. I think that's something really cool about that song.
I think that this is more, there's not any real metal parts you could say here, but that's kind of like saying that Thin Lizzy has no metal in them either. And I completely disagree. I think there's many things about Thin Lizzy that make them a heavy metal band, not just a hard rock band. So I think it was time for us to fully venture into this realm. And I think we successfully did it with this, and we're very happy with the content here on this tune.
Yeah, kind of what I was saying earlier about the song being different than the other two previous releases. Empire's Fall and Kill the Pain have this attitude and grit, and energy, and it's very Night Demon. And Are You Out There is it's its own thing. It's its own standalone song, and I like the fact that it's a little more hard rock and less metal. You know, we were thinking along the lines of like a good Thin Lizzy song, and Thin Lizzy didn't rock out all the time. They had stuff that was really ballady. They had stuff that was really groovy. You know, they got heavy sometimes and really ripped on the guitars and did some really cool fills on the drums and stuff like that. But at the root of Thin Lizzy, they're a hard rock band. So that's kind of the conscious effort to write a song like them, in the sense, you know?
So last week, we got into the origins and the evolutions of the song. We listened to some early demos, all in the lead up to recording with producer Steve Albini in his studio, Electrical Audio, in Chicago.
Steve Albini has been somebody that I know Armand and I have wanted to record with for a long time. He's just kind of like this guy that his name has been tossed around for a long time as a guy who just gets really raw recordings. He always stuck with the analog system. He never switched over to digital. And in these days, it's rare to find people that have done that have just stayed true to that and have kept going. There's countless records that Steve Albini's done, but really it was the Pixies album Surfer Rosa that I got into in the early 2000s that the sounds on there were just so amazing, and the natural reverbs of the room, and it's just how raw the band sounded. I was just completely blown away by that.
We were in Chicago for a Surathongal gig, so Armand and I were just teching. Jarvis was playing and doing the thing, and since we had some time there, we decided to book some studio time with Albini and go into his studio and do a song. So it worked out really nicely to just have the time out there and be able to go right in and get stuff done.
Yeah, recording with Steve Albini was a dream of mine. I mean, he was one of my top 5 influences as a recording engineer. I don't know, I just always loved the way his records sound. I think I first got turned on to him, you know, when I was a teenager, when Nirvana's In Utero album came out. And it was just like, what the fuck? This sounds so crazy, you know? It was like really cool. The drums are really roomy. And then I started to realize, like hearing, you know, the Pixies and all those kind of bands from that era, like he was a big part of a lot of that. And you can hear his sound. I mean, it's a signature sound, you know? That's one of the cool things about being in a recording world. You know, you can do that. You can have a signature sound, and but it's cool to have that, but still give the band an identity. I think for him, it's more of the drum sound, you know? There's this kind of like slight delay, slapback sound to the room mics. And I got to watch him, you know, create that thing. There's a little secret. I won't talk about it right now, but... So it was really cool. He's really just a straight shooter, you know. He's one of those guys that'll tell you, like, hey, I'm here to work for you. I'm an engineer. I'm not a producer. So don't ask me for musical opinions or if the chorus is good or if I like the song. To him, it doesn't matter to him. He's just there to provide a service and to engineer and make you sound the best that you can sound, whether your song sucks or it's good, you know. So you got to respect him for that.
Albini's very... I don't want to say black and white, but he kind of is. Like, he's really just like, you know, he's like, hey, I'm just here because this is my studio and you guys are paying me to hit the buttons, not to tell you how to write your song. And I think we were looking for a little bit of his input, but he doesn't really give any. He just wants you to play your song. And that was one thing I remember him saying a bunch is, just play it like you normally play it. Don't change anything. Don't, it is what it is. So don't get caught up in anything that you don't need to. I felt comfortable working with him, kind of like with Fleming as well. I didn't get nervous or anything. I think I was excited, anxious to get it going. I worked on drum sounds for quite a while and getting the tuning and working in the small room, but it was really, it was cool, He is who he is, and I think that's the certain charm about him. So
it was pretty cool. Like, he came in the morning and we got to meet him, and he goes down and he changes, he puts on a jumpsuit like he's going to work in the boiler room and shit like that, like just real like working man kind of guy, So it was cool. We enjoyed it. We got to really sit down and kind of let him, open up, and we had a good experience with him, giving us some cool stories about, records he's done in the past and about the studio. That studio was kind of a dream studio for him. I mean, they really like kind of built that place from the ground up. They bought the building that was there, but the only thing that's left from the original building is just kind of like basically the outer shell. They really revamped the whole thing from the inside out. A lot of techie shit, like stuff that, it's too much to talk about here, but you can search it out. There's plenty of stuff on all that online.
Getting to go record with him was actually not as much of a challenge as it may seem. We had a friend named Mark Joseph who plays guitar in a hardcore punk band out of Amsterdam called Vitamin X. And Night Demon had done one of our very first shows with them, actually, when they came to California. And they had done 2 records with Steve Albini, and they recorded them both in 10 days. And I was like, man, that's amazing. How did you afford that? How'd you get that connection? They were on a very small punk label, Tank Crimes. And it's like, how did that happen? And he's like, well, we just emailed him. So I was like, okay, easy as that, huh? So years later, when it came up to doing this, I just reached out to Mark and I said, what's Albini doing lately? And he's like, I honestly have no idea. So I said, okay, well, let's give it a shot. So I went online and I looked up Electric Audio, which is his studio that he owns in Chicago. And we had a date in May. Cirith Ungol was headlining a festival in Chicago, and Night Demon was going to be flown out to be the road crew for them. And we had an extra day off. And so months ahead of time, I just called and said, hey, is Steve available for a session? And they said, yeah, here's the price. And you have to buy a reel of 2-inch analog tape. And here are the hours. And do you want to book the session? And we're like, okay, cool. Let's do it. And so it's simple as that. That's how it went.
We were already there for a festival that Cirith Ungol was playing. So we just piggybacked that whole thing onto that. We booked a day into Electrical Audio. That's his studio there. And went in just to get the instrumental version of the song down. We knew that the vocals we could do at my place, and
he didn't want to hear any demos or anything. He's just going to work. So we showed up that morning and we had the song ready to go. We set up a couple cameras around and asked him if we could record the session. He was totally fine with that. His intern made us some coffee, and we just got into it. We started setting up some drums. He had this room with a bunch of different drums in it. He had, the exact amps that we wanted to use, and we just set up in the room, and we played the song live. And it was great. He was very serious, but he was very professional about everything. He has always said that he is not a music producer when he's working in the studio with other bands. He'll be a music producer with his own music, but not with other bands, which is, you know, how he makes a living and what he's really known for. And, you know, his job, he considers himself just an audio engineer, and he's there to get the sounds that the band wants. He's there to capture how the band sounds live in a room. He's not there to shape the songs or put his influence on anything. And like we've talked about all these singles and we'll continue to talk about till the end of time, we were a very prepared band going in. And even if any of these producers wanted to have their stamp on it, it was going to be really hard to do, A, because of limited time, and B, because we had worked these songs out so much ourselves. We knew exactly what we wanted to do. There was one point in the guitar lead that happens on the intro and the reintros. We weren't totally settled on how we wanted that to go. And Armand and I kept going back and forth for weeks about just trying to perfect it and just trying to have the right selection of notes. When you play something like that doesn't have 1,000 notes in it, it's really important what notes you pick. And you can really get down to the nitty gritty of, you know, does that one note in there make sense? Does it bring the mood that we're trying to bring? Especially with a harmony, there's so many different harmonies, and one note is actually two notes, and there are so many different combinations of that. It was just really important for us to really get what we wanted in the end and to figure it out. And so it's like a puzzle. And I remember at one point we kind of, after so long, came down to two options that we liked. And we just kind of said, look, you know, I mean, at least I was like, we're here with Steve Albini. I would love to know his opinion just on something as simple as that. Hey, what do you think sounds cooler? Like this note or that note? And he just wouldn't give his opinion on that. And he says, it's your song. And, you know, for a minute there, I was frustrated because I was like, look, man, it's like, you got to understand, we're coming to you for your lifetime of expertise and making great records that we love. So even if you didn't influence those records musically, you were there, you captured it, you have a lot of musical knowledge that we respect. So we actually want your opinion on this. We would love to hear your opinion to help us decide where to go here. And it's just not what he does, and it's not what he was interested in, and it's not what he wanted to do. So in the end, we just decided on it, and we made the right choice.
You know, it's kind of hard. You think, oh, one song in one day for a one song, like, oh, whatever, that should be easy. But, you know, you don't take into consideration, you know, the setup time. It's not like we're walking into the studio and everything's set up for us to just sit down or you know, Dusty doesn't just be able to sit down behind the drum kit and go. It's like, okay, let's go check out what you have here. You know, he's got a bunch of different drums, and so there was a few different kind of amps. There was a really cool 70s Marshall JMP there that I ended up using that I really loved. I had a couple of my pedals with me too, so I used my probably the Maxon Overdrive. It's kind of like a Tube Screamer 808 Overdrive. Put that in front of that puppy, and that's the tone. I mean, it's similar to what I would do anywhere, you know, but the cool thing is that, you know, having the room that he has there and just getting that cool kind of sound that he's famous for was fucking amazing, you know?
We were prepared and the song was ready, and then, you know, the groove in the studio that day was just perfect. You know, it all came together with all the preparation. What we captured at Albini's studio was perfect. You know, I actually recorded to a click in the studio to start. And I think I did, 3 takes to the click. And I just felt like I was being held back. You know, it just didn't feel right. You know, there must have been some energy in his studio because, it's one of those things where, yeah, that tempo might feel good at Armand's place while we're trying to iron out all these parts. But once the song's figured out and we're playing to that same tempo at Steve's, it just didn't feel like I was getting that energy across or any of that. So we canned the click and I ended up doing a take and it was like, whoa, okay, now we have the vibe. So it was helpful to have the click because it kind of got me into the headspace of, okay, like you got to tame this horse. You can't just get on it and go full bore. And you can't lay back too far because it's got to be a happy medium. And once we got rid of the click, I actually played naturally 2 beats faster than what we had the click, because I remember listening back to what I recorded, because we recorded the 2-inch tape. Listening back, I was tap tempoing a metronome on my phone, and it was 2 beats faster, but that's all it needed in both sections, in the main part of the song and the outro, or I should say the bridge, speed up part. And it's exactly what the song needed, just a little bit of pep. His studio is amazing. Everything that's there is top notch. And the experience was really great, super simple, easy going. Drank some coffee and kicked it without Beanie and talked some shit. And, it was cool to go in there and just get it done, cut the track, and we were recording on tape. So it was cool to see him work the machine and get that ready and how fast he is with it and, finding his spots on tape and doing all that. So not a negative thing I have to say about that experience at all. It was awesome.
So after a full day in Steve Albini's studio, recording on May 19th, 2019, Night Demon nails the instrumental tracks for Are You Out There? Heard here in this rough instrumental mix. So with this Thin Lizzy-inspired instrumental, Jarvis sets to work on finalizing lyrics, which are also Thin Lizzy-inspired.
The relation of this song to Thin Lizzy, besides, I would say, the riffs being somewhat reminiscent of something that they would have written, is obviously the lyrical content. And we went into this as a tribute to Thin Lizzy, not to totally sound like them. It still sounds like us. There's a lot of bands out there that are all about the Lizzy worship, and you can tell right away. And there's a lot of riffs that sound like they're straight lifted from the band. And that's just something that never interested us. So it was really nice to have the focus going into writing this as like a tribute to Thin Lizzy. And so when you get into the lyrical content, I thought that it was really cool to have a fitting lyric to go along with the music, something that really ties it all together, instead of writing a song that's like, hey, this song could have been written by Thin Lizzy, and here's something maybe that they would have sang about. But there's so many different topics that band sang about. So we wanted to make this centrally focused to something about Phil Lynott specifically. But if to the ordinary listener that's not a Thin Lizzy fan, you would never know, and it's that it's about him specifically, and there's a lot of metaphors in there lyrically that really most people can relate to. My personal experience with Thin Lizzy is when I was about 12 years old, my aunt gave me and my cousin her vinyl record collection, and we kind of split it amongst ourselves. And I saw the Jailbreak album in there, and I just loved the comic book kind of cover art that Jim Fitzpatrick did on that. And I got into it, and I was like, oh, the Boys Are Back in Town. That's this band. Okay. I knew that song. Actually, I think I knew that song because it was on the soundtrack to the movie Navy SEALs. And I went to see that in the movie theater with my friends when I was a kid. And so I knew that song, and, you'd hear it on the radio occasionally or on a beer commercial or something like that. And, that's kind of where it all got started. But it wasn't until years later, I was actually at a Metallica show in the 90s, and they were playing it before they went on stage. And I thought, well, let me dive into the band, like, really. And so I bought like a greatest hits CD or something, and I was like, holy shit, and the story's so long from then, but the band has become one of my top 5 favorite bands of all time since then. And I actually played in a Thin Lizzy tribute in the early 2000s that never actually played live, but it was a lot of fun learning those parts. I was playing guitar, and Armand, as we all know, has played in multiple different Thin Lizzy tributes.
Hey guys, Nesbitt here. If you'd like to support Night Demon and this podcast, the best way to do it is to become a Night Demon subscriber. Not only will you be doing your part to support a true heavy metal band out there really living it, you'll also gain access to a ton of extras. Bonus audio content, a subscriber-only merch store with rare items from the band's archives. You can stream never-before-heard demos and unearth live concerts from the live vaults. Communicate with the other Night Demon diehards on an exclusive subscriber forum, and gain early access to all press releases, album pre-orders, new merchandise, and a ton more. And another thing that I think is pretty cool is Night Demon will be donating 10% of every subscription fee to the Metal Cares Foundation, which is a charitable fund the band started in 2014 to aid those in our metal community. So head over to nightdemon.net/subscriber and join us as we make heavy metal history together as one. And on a side note, I'll personally think you're a grade A badass.
So the song title being Are You Out There was inspired by a phrase that Phil would say a lot in concert. He would always say, "Are you out there?"
Are you out there?
And of course, the title of the song, Are You Out There? It's like a thing he would always say live. Are you out there? Like to the crowd, like, come on, are you out there? So it's a very, like, Phil in it, like, kind of line. So I figured it was fitting for the title.
I mean, really, it's just kind of one of those things that you would, if you're a hardcore Thin Lizzy fan, you would definitely get that reference. And if not, it's still fine because lyrically, it kind of, having that title kind of drove the lyrics, because saying "Are you out there?" it just exactly goes along with what's happening here with the theme of the song. The theme of the song is it's a cry for help from Phil's friends and family and the people that loved and cared about him in his life around the times near his death when he had his tragic downfall into drugs and alcohol that ultimately consumed not only his life, but his self-respect and his dignity.
One more for the road, cannot get enough, but you can feel your heart is pounding.
So the lyrics of the song, obviously about Phil. You know, I mean, like I mentioned before, having the song as a Thin Lizzy-esque song and wanting to do some kind of tribute to the band. There was a song that I wrote 20 years ago for one of the bands that I was in, Hybrid Moments, which was essentially started as a Misfits tribute band, but we did an EP called the Marilyn EP, and we wrote some original songs. And there was a song called Marilyn.
Don't take those pills, they're bad for you. But you don't care like me. Yeah, he goes away fighting. Where I had you, might as well have gone and died. 'Cause that's the way I feel inside. Cause you're my Marilyn. You're my Marilyn.
The title of the song had actually come up as a working title by the other guys in the band that weren't singing or weren't writing the lyrics. When I came into the band, the music was already written and they just had working titles for all these songs. And so the working title was Marilyn. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to write this song about Marilyn Monroe. And I wrote it, you know, I had this idea, well, let me not just write a song about, you know, Marilyn Monroe, like, well, she's the biggest, you know, silver screen actress of all time. You know, it's like, that's just boring shit. That's not a good song. So I actually, you know, knowing part of her history and being a big fan of cinema and old Hollywood myself, you know, had a little bit of knowledge about her life. And I wrote the song from Joe DiMaggio's perspective. Joe DiMaggio, the very famous New York Yankees baseball player who was formerly married to Marilyn Monroe and part of the very first incarnation of the Rat Pack, you know, they had a very, very tumultuous relationship and a very bad divorce. And, you know, here's this guy who, you know, he's Joe Cool, you know, right? And he is like one of the coolest dudes around. He's a mega celebrity of his time. He's an outstanding Hall of Fame championship baseball player who played among the greats and was one of the greatest players of all time. But, you know, he had some problems in his life, and he had a woman who was equally in her own right, very independent and, you know, very famous as well. And, you know, possibly a bit promiscuous. You know, I think they both had drug and alcohol problems. And, you know, he lost control of her, and he wanted to be in control of their relationship at least. You know, I'm not going to speak for him and say he wanted to be in control of her, but that's a tough pill to swallow. That's a big ego blow to somebody that's, you know, when your whole life everybody's just telling you how great you are, and then the woman that you're married to and you want to be with doesn't want to be with you. And so I wrote that song from his perspective, you know, around that time that things were falling apart for them and how desperate he was.
Where I had you, might as well have gone and died. 'Cause that's the way I feel inside. See, I love you like our brothers do. 'Cause you're my Marilyn. You're my Marilyn.
I think when it came to writing Are You Out There, I kind of channeled back the same kind of mood that I was in 20 years ago, writing this song about Marilyn Monroe from DiMaggio's perspective. And so with Are You Out There, the idea was to write a song about Phil Lynott as, you know, a desperate cry for help from everybody that surrounded him and the people that really cared about him. Because near the end of his life, his friends had abandoned him. And, I don't know the ins and outs. I don't know if he pushed them away, but that tends to happen a lot when you're dealing with addicts. But I know that there were people in his life that still cared about him unconditionally. His mother, his former wife and his kids, his bandmates, and probably some other friends too. And I'm sure there were many times that they reached out to him. I know of some accounts. I've read about some stuff that Scott Gorham's written. But I'm not going to speak for anybody else. All I can do is speak from this kind of shared experience from everyone and the vibe that I get from it, and to create something that's universal lyrically that anybody could relate to about any situation in their life. And so a lot of the song also comes, I think I was half writing the song about myself as well, because at the time I was going through some sobriety and really reflecting on the ways that I damaged my own life with drugs and alcohol, and some of the terrible decisions that I've made, and some of the consequences that came with that. Ayn Rand said, you can ignore reality, but you can't ignore the consequences of ignoring reality. And that had really come to a head in my life. And so I thought this was the perfect time for me to have my shared experience, to really write something that was emotionally palatable for the content that I was about to write. I wanted to make sure that I was in the right headspace and I was in the right time in my life to be a reputable author for something this important.
So that's it for this week on Are You Out There? Next week in part 3, we're going to really dive into these lyrics and break down the riffs and the fills that make this song so great, and the meaning behind the cover art and more. As always, be sure to check out the subscriber section on nightdemon.net for bonus content, full demos of this and a lot of the other songs that we've covered on this podcast. Then we have the rough instrumental mix of this song that we heard a clip from today. Also in the subscriber store, there's a few remaining Lilac 7-inch singles of this track. Once they're gone, they're gone. These are a few that the band had put aside when the single was released, but they're making them available on nightdemon.net in the subscriber store. Also, a reminder that all of these tracks are now released on the compilation Year of the Demon as of today on CD, vinyl, and cassette. There's also some cool bundles and some very cool looking Year of the Demon t-shirt. Check out nightdemon.net again for more info on that too. Until next week, this is Nesbitt signing off.
Thanks for listening to the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast. Head over to nightdemon.net, click on the subscriber tab, and sign up to access exclusive weekly bonus content. If you would like to donate to support the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast, you can do so through PayPal. at paypal.me/nightdemonmetal. Additionally, if you have not already done so, please subscribe, like, rate, and review the show on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts.
All hail, Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast listeners. This is Dusty Squires chiming in to tell you about my brand new signature sticks from the London Drumstick Company. I've dreamt of having my very own drumsticks ever since I was a wee lad, and LDC made that a possibility for me. Founded in 2016 in London, England, the birthplace of heavy metal, the London Drumstick Company has trailblazed a path through the music industry and taken the drummer world by storm. When I met them for the first time, they knew their product was going to withstand the beatings of a Night Demon show. They took the time to work with me on getting everything just right. The balance and weight of my sticks are the same no matter what, and the durability is bar none the best I've ever had. I know my sticks will last through the set night after night. I'm truly honored to work with a company that caters to their players the way LDC does. Their innovation and attention to detail is what separates them from the rest of the stick makers out there. Their custom stick sleeves are unbelievable and really make the entire presentation complete. Wait until you see the design they came up with for me. It blew my mind and was a surprise to say the least. They have all kinds of amazing swag, including hoodies, t-shirts, drummer shorts, drum keys, stick bags, towels, face masks, practice pads, and much, much more. Even if you're not a drummer, you can be a part of Demon history and order my brand new signature sticks direct from their website. How cool is that? And to top it off, the London Drumstick Company are giving an exclusive offer to the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast listeners. Go to londondrumsticks.co.uk and receive a 15% store-wide discount using promo code DEMONSTICKS. All capital letters, no spaces, Demon Sticks. DEMONSTICKS. I can't thank everyone there enough for the opportunity to be a part of their family and for them trusting me with their amazing products. See you metal maniacs on the road very soon. And yes, the wood chips will be flying.
Greetings, boils and ghouls. This is your comrade, the Crypt Keeper here, reporting dead from the sanctuary of the strange. Tonight's macabre myth is a fright-filled feature, one overflowing with monsters, madness, and magic.
Visit our website at monstersmadnessandmagic.com to stay up to date on all the dark dealings within the sanctuary of the strange. Enjoy the show.
Hey Metalheads, I'm Mark and I host the Metal Forge. Let me tell you about the show. The Metal Forge features the best underground metal from all over the world. We spend every week with a different artist with interviews, in-depth conversations, and most of all, the music. We also feature audience interactivity where you can submit your questions to the upcoming guests. New episodes are out every Friday at noon Eastern Time at metalforgeradio.com or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Want to know what's going on in the world of music? Then tune in to the Nothing Shocking Podcast, a non-genre based, all-ages friendly rock and roll program. Join us weekly for interviews with all your favorite rock stars from the mainstream to the underground. You can find us at nothingshocking.libsyn.com or anywhere you download podcasts.
Okay, metalheads, you've been complaining that there has not been a channel that plays all of the heavy metal videos from past, present, and future for years and years at this point. Well, that time is over. Heavy Metal Television is back. HeavyMetalTelevision.net is the website. Go there. You can see videos playing 24/7, 365, all the time, all the best from the old school, the new school, and everything in between. Check it out, heavymetaltelevision.net. It is where the metal is.